They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
It's a very good quote. It's a very interesting quote. And I know who said it. But what difference does it make, whether it's Mussolini or somebody else?
You want to be associated with a fascist?
No, I want to be associated with interesting quotes. And certainly, hey, it got your attention, didn't it?
I will be Donald Trump's most loyal advocate.
You know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
The man that will easily go down as the greatest president in the history of the United States. Me.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
He doesn't seem to go out of his way to express his outrage over people hailing him with Nazi salutes. Why doesn't he do that more dramatically, if you will, and make it clear he wants no part of these people?
That's because that's not his focus. His focus is making this country better for all Americans.
Please raise your right hand.
Sadly, the American dream is dead.
And there have been episodes in human history, unfortunately, where these expressions of this strident rhetoric have only led to very ominous situations in the history of humanity. That's how Mussolini got in. That's how Hitler got in, and I think what they put forward ended up at what we know today from history in global conflagration.
We will have unquestioned military strength beyond anything anybody can imagine.
Professor Paxton, welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you very much for inviting me.
What do you think of Donald Trump? Is he a fascist?
Well, I think Donald Trump shows a rather alarming willingness to use fascist themes and fascist styles, which and the response this gets, the positive response, is alarming.
What is fascism?
Well, fascism is a mass nationalist movement intended to restore a country that's been damaged or is in decline by expansion, by violent attacks on enemies, internal as well as external enemies, and measures of authority, the replacement of democracy by an authoritarian dictatorship.
It is a fact, and you will not deny it.
It is not the loudest voice that prevails in a courtroom. It's the Constitution.
The danger, it seems to me, is that in a deadlock between Trump and the Congress or Trump and the courts, he would indeed take some kind of non-constitutional action, and people would be afraid to say no.
This is a judicial usurpation of power. The end result of this, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned.
Last week, Bannon told the New York Times, the media here is the opposition party. One day later, the president echoed the same sentiment.
I think the media is the opposition party in many ways.
That's how dictators get started.
Meet Steve Bannon, labeled a lying, vindictive, abusive champion of white nationalists.
I think anger is a good thing. I think if you're fighting, this country's in a crisis. And if you're fighting to save this country, if you're fighting to take this country back, there's going to be people who want to fight. In fact, we call ourselves internally the Fight Club, right? And our watchword is kind of fights that matter.
He's driving decisions on every piece of President Trump's agenda, domestic and foreign. But it's his elevation to a permanent spot on the National Security Council that is now outraging even many Republicans. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the director of National Intelligence will no longer have a standing seat.
It was an executive order that the president signed, but apparently he wasn't fully briefed on, so the president didn't know that he was putting Steve Bannon on the NSC. How did that happen?
I think to say that we're in control would be a substantial understatement.
Bannon, who advised Trump during the campaign, is a key figure in the so-called alt-right, a loosely organized group of neo-Nazis and white supremacists. White nationalists are said to be rejoicing at Trump's choice of Bannon. Still, Trump backers stand by it.
It's Donald Trump's call to put people he trusts to advise him. That doesn't mean he accepts their positions on these things.
Since your election campaign and even after your victory, we've seen a sharp rise in anti-Semitic incident across the United States. And I wonder, what do you say to those among the Jewish community in the States and in Israel and maybe around the world who believe and feel that your administration is playing with xenophobia and maybe racist tones?
Well, I just want to say that we are, very honored by the victory that we had, 306 electoral college votes. We were not supposed to crack 220. You know that, right? There was no way to 221, but then they said there's no way to 270. And there's tremendous enthusiasm out there. I will say that I think that you're going to see a lot of love. You're going to see a lot of love. Okay? Thank you. Number one, I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen in your entire life. Number two, racism, the least racist person. You heard Netanyahu yesterday. Did you hear him, Bibi? He said, I've known Donald Trump for a long time. And then he said, forget it. So you should take that instead of having to get up and ask a very insulting question like that.
Steve Bannon said, quote, the media should be embarrassed and humiliated and keep its mouth shut.
I'm prepared to go on any show, anywhere, anytime, and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
That's a White House advisor, right?
Oh, my God. It's not even funny. Can't even...
Oh, my God.
It
was so much worse.
It's much
than I
worse.
ever thought.
It's much worse.